Hi, I'm Chris Frame and welcome back to my channel. For the first time in history, all of the world's cruise lines have entered into an extended pause of operations. The scale of the global shutdown is like nothing the world has ever seen before, and it dwarfs past cruise line disruptions, including those caused by 9/11 or the UK Seaman strike of the 1960s. This pause is in response to the 2020 coronavirus outbreak, which has led to international border closures and travel restrictions being implemented by governments around the world. Cruise lines started pausing their operations in March 2020. The prospect of taking a cruise through to the middle of the year dissolved in April when the US government announced a ban on cruising in US waters. In the week since, other countries have enacted similar measures, and at the time of recording, all major cruise lines, both ocean cruising and river cruising, have cancelled future voyages for periods that extend from July through to September 2020. When cruising bans were first announced, many cruise ships were in the midst of cruise voyages, with passengers on board. While some ships, such as the Artania, Ruby Princess and Diamond Princess, were hit with serious COVID-19 outbreaks, the majority of cruise ships have remained virus-free. But with cruise bans in place and lines entering into operational pauses, the world's cruise ships gradually emptied out, with passengers disembarked at ports around the world from March through to April. Once passengers were disembarked, the cruise lines had to find space to berth the world's huge fleet of cruise ships. In a state known as warm layup, the ships remain active with engines still running and are independent of shore power. Throughout April, British ports bore witness to many cruise ship visits, as vessels from Cunard, P&O UK, Fred Olsen and Saga returned to their home ports to disembark passengers. Many of the UK's cruise ships have since farewelled non-essential crew and are operating with only essential personnel such as officers, engineers and deck crew on board. Southampton, the UK's busiest cruise port, saw many movements in the early days of the cruise pause, and while some ships such as Queen Mary II, Britannia and Queen Victoria remain at the port, others such as Aurora and Oceania have headed to the British port of Dover. Ships of the Marella fleet have spent an extended periods of time at anchorage points off the Isle of Wight, while Fred Olsen's fleet are anchored off Edinburgh. In the United States, the world's largest cruise market, the ports of Miami and Fort Lauderdale have been particular hives of activity, as local cruise ships return to US ports to disembark passengers. There are so many ships in the US market that many of them have since had to go to sea for long-term storage at anchorage points. A busy anchorage location can be found in the waters off Grand Bahama, where ships from Carnival Cruise Lines, Holland America, Royal Caribbean and Norwegian Cruise Line have been based for the past month. In Europe, the waters off Italy are equally as busy, with the majority of the large Costa Cruise Line fleet sailing between ports and at anchorages off the Italian coast. With the ships anchored in clusters close by to each other, the crews on board can be heard cheering to each other during the day, while a tradition has started of sounding ships' whistles in unison as a sign of the cruise industry's solidarity. Australia is one of the more popular international cruise markets, yet its ports are largely empty of cruise ships. This is due to the Australian ban on cruise ships, which saw vessels evicted from the country. You can check out my video about that in the info card on the screen or in the description below. With Australian-based cruise ships unable to remain in Australian waters, many, including the fleets of P&O Cruises Australia, have headed north to the Philippines. Anchored in Manila Bay, a large cluster of vessels has formed, including Queen Elizabeth, Carnival Spirit, Pacific Dawn, Pacific Explorer, Sea Princess, Voyager of the Seas and Majestic Princess. One of the more notable ships to be caught up in the cruise pause is the Scarlet Lady from Virgin Voyages. Having only completed her shakedown and media cruises, the ship's itinerary was cancelled up until August 2020. She's currently in the Caribbean Sea, and the officers on board the ship recently changed the ship's navigational information to say "stay at home" when people were looking up her destination. Keen observers will notice how many laid-up cruise ships are making occasional trips out to open ocean. This is to allow them to replenish water supplies and discharge grey water. As you can tell, many cruise ships remain at sea with their crews still on board, and flights are disrupted around the world due to the collapse of the international air travel market. So many cruise ships are being put to use to repatriate their crews to their home countries. These include Regal, Island, Crown and Caribbean Princess from Princess Cruises, New Amsterdam, Volendam and Veendam from Holland America Line, and the Seabourn Quest, all of which will make long-duration voyages to locations such as the Philippines, Indonesia, South Africa, the Caribbean, the UK and Europe. As the impact of coronavirus continues through 2020, there is bound to be further updates on the use of cruise ships during this year, so don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for future videos. I hope you found this update interesting, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you're a fan of cruising, why not check out my cruise ship review playlist? Or for history buffs, take a look at my historical tour aboard QE2. Thanks so much for watching, and when we're allowed to cruise again, I hope to see you on board.